All right, hello everybody. So today we are going to be doing notes 2. We're going to be talking about domain and range, which popped up a little bit yesterday. So you should be open right now to page 8 or 9. Really, we're going to start doing a little bit of kind of basic introduction on page 8. So if you haven't already, you guys can pause the video if people still need to get that open, but it should already be open on your desk, something to write with, okay? So for domain and range, we're going to be talking about what the difference is. Yesterday, we had been looking at like tables, mappings, all kinds of things that looked like this. But on the mappings, we noticed that we had all these values kind of moving from, one place to another. But it said domain and range instead of X and Y. So what this is telling us, and yesterday we talked about how domain is X and range is Y, which is essentially what is true. It's not quite as simple as that. But all we need to know is this, that domain is the X values in a relation or a function. It's just every single one of the possible X values. So usually people would say that's something we should include, that it's the possible X values that occur in whatever we're looking at, right? Whether it's ordered pairs, a graph, a table, or a mapping. Okay, the other thing we have is going to be our range, and it's just the other side of that. It's all the possible Y values. So not any Y value that's ever possible, right? But it's all the Y values that we see in any given relation that we looked at yesterday, where it's just kind of points or functions as we get closer into that in the next few days. So let's take a look at some actual physical examples. I'll give you a second to get this all written down. And then let's do some examples. We're going to kind of go through all of them. There are 5 examples in the notes. So we'll do all those, and then you guys know the drill. So make sure we are being respectful to the sub and to each other, and that you're doing what you're being asked to do, okay? Now, number 1, it says state the domain and range, okay? Really, they only have specific pieces like in IXL that they're asking here. But for this one, I'm going to have us actually do both, okay? The domain and the range. Now, it says just to look at this relation, okay, which we have a graph here. Now, yesterday when we looked at graphs, I said, let's go ahead and write out each of the points as ordered pairs so we can kind of physically see what each of those numbers is. In the future, you might not need to do this, but today, again, we're going to start by doing that so that we're all used to seeing things in kind of the same format. So what are my points? Well, here I see that I have the point -1, +4. That's this one in the red. Then I have the orange, -1, -5. And then I have the green, which is 3, 1. But what do we know about any ordered pair? Well, I know it's just X, Y. That's every single ordered pair that we have. On the coordinate plane, we read it X, Y. And what do we know based on the page before? What is domain? That's what they want. Domain is just all the X values. So like, what are my possible X values? Well, I see -1. And I see 3. That's as simple as it is, okay? So for domain, when we see these kind of graphs where they're just random points kind of hanging around instead of a whole nice graph, like we've seen a line, for example, before, where everything's connected, with these, you just list out the possible opportunities that we have. So the only thing that's a little different is this. They want us to write it using these little squiggly brackets. So in IXL, they'll already be there, but if it's freehand, you have to write out those symbols. Okay, and then it just says separate by a comma. So what are my domain, my X values? We said -1 and 3. So we separate by a comma. Now, what are the values in my range though? Well, range is all of my Y values, right? So I can see all of my Y values here, 4, -5, 1. So they're all distinct or separate numbers. So I'm gonna write them all out, and I'm gonna use my little squiggly brackets here. I'm gonna write out my own. Now, a lot of people say you should write them in ascending order, so like smallest to largest. Really, a lot of people would say we want to write them in smallest to largest. So -5 would be the first, then +1, then 4. If you look at them on a number line, that would be the order that they come in, right? Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to the next one. What is the range of this relation? Okay, so now that we know how to do both, let's go ahead and look at this piece. How are we going to do the range? First of all, you need to know what range is. We know all points are X, Y, and we know range is all my Y values, right? So what am I going to list out? I'm going to list out in order, okay, that's technically how they should be, -13, 0, and positive 1. Those appear to be all the values in my range, in my y values, okay? So they should be in order. You don't have to list any repeating values. But again, as long as you have all of your numbers listed, then it's not the end of the world, okay? So get used to that, but on a quiz, it does become a little easier if you put them in order. It's really how they should be written, okay? Even if they're not written that way in the original problem, I'd like you to write them that way. Okay, number 3, take a look, right? Why don't you take a second, see if you can while the video is playing, if you can kind of start, or if you're moving ahead, you can check as we go. But it asks for the same thing. What is my range? I would say the easiest way to do this, okay, if you don't feel like you can look very carefully at the graph, write out all the points. I see 4 points on this graph, so I'm just going to write each of them out separately. So what are my points? I see -4, 3. That's this one in the red. I see -3, 0, which is the orange. I see 1, 2 in the green. And then the blue, I see 2, 3. Okay, so you have all your points down. And now the last thing is, can you decide which ones are we looking at? Well, range has to be the y values. So if it's the y values, go ahead and figure out what are all my values and how do we list them out. Well, if I want to do this from smallest to largest, the smallest value I see in all of these is 0, then I see 2, and then I see 3. Now, we don't have to list 3 twice because we know it just is what are all the possible y values. All the possible y values are 0, 2, and 3. There's no additional ones, so we don't need to list it twice, okay? That's something that I would kind of be strict on. You should not list it 2 times. And again, they should be in order, so I'd like you to get in the habit of that. And that's the idea, okay? So domain is X, range is Y. Okay, so let's take a look at 4 and 5, okay? So the best thing to do for this one is I would like you to pause the video here, okay, and give everybody maybe a second to try these, okay, maybe a minute or so. But if you don't get the chance to do so, I will go over them right now in the video. That way you can kind of take a look if we're still stuck. Other than that, pause the video, give people a chance to try them. And then after that time is up, about a minute or 2, keep playing the video and then I'll show the answers. Okay, so if you're unpausing right now and you've gotten a chance to try them, wonderful. If not, then you just heard me take kind of a weird long pause and you're going to continue like nothing happened, okay? So what is number 4 asking? Now it says domain and range, which we kind of did at the beginning. And what do we know? Well, we know domain is always going to be my X values. So I'm going to take a look at every single one of these. I'm going to highlight them in yellow. All my X values. Let's go ahead and list them out from smallest to largest. So I see -12, then I see 11, +12, 13, and 18. And I'm not listing any number that occurs twice 2 times. So the 18, we're just going to list it 1 time. Okay, looks great. So what do we know about range? Range is Y values, so we're going to highlight those in green, and let's list them out. Smallest to largest, I see 1, 3, 4, 8, 10, and 19. Okay, looks awesome. All right, finally, my next one, I wrote all my points out. I got -3, -1, 0, -3, 0, -4, and 5, 3. Okay, remember what I said. If you don't need to write out every single point, then you don't have to, right? If this is something that you can do without doing any additional work and you can see that all these are the X values that are covered, then I don't mind, okay? But you have to find them somehow, right? So what is my domain? All the X values I see, -3, 0, 5. Listing all 3 of them. And then finally, my range, -4, -3, -1, and +3. Okay, so that's numbers 4 and 5 to finish up, and that looks great. Okay, so nice job. So now that notes are over, the sub is going to pass out the practice for today. It says it's 7 questions. I would like you to skip number 7 because it is a word problem that we haven't done anything similar to. But all it is a ton of questions on domain and range. Okay, you should get about 10 minutes to work on that. And then they will be collected at the end of class. So I will be taking a look at those. Okay, so let me know if you have any questions. Tomorrow I'll be back. I might pop in, hopefully after this at some point, and come see you. So good luck, and I will see you tomorrow.